Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you provide and, well, we dig into them to pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight. Today, we're jumping into the really dynamic and, let's be honest, sometimes challenging world of business change. We're looking at all those ripple effects. You've given us a great source here looking at stakeholder impacts of business change. So our job is to cut through the noise for you. We want to show you who gets affected when a business, shifts gears, how they're affected, and crucially, why understanding all this is just so important for everyone involved. From the people actually owning the business right through to the community it sits in. Change, well, it touches everything. So let's unpack this. Let's see what the source tells us about these connections. Okay, so the source kicks off by defining stakeholders. It says they're individuals or groups with a vested interest in the activities of a business. But what really stands out is that it says any change, doesn't matter the form, will affect these groups. It's not an if, it's a how.
Yeah. Exactly. And it makes a useful distinction right away.
Yeah.
We got major or transformational change. Think big stuff like mergers, completely new structures, new tech, different corporate culture. And then there's incremental change, which is smaller, like an employee just switching from using the post to using email for customer comms. But the key thing here, and this is important, is that both types, big or small, can lead to positives or negative results. It really depends.
Okay, got it. So let's break that down. First group,
Right.
the owners, sole traders, partners, shareholders. The source seems to suggest how involved they are day to day really dictates the level of impact.
That's spot on. A sole trader or maybe a partner who's really hands-on, they'll feel the changes much more directly, more personally. Shareholders might be a bit more removed from the daily stuff, sure, but they'll definitely feel the financial side of things. And it's interesting, the source points out this sort of dual nature for owners. Change goes well, great. Better financial performance, maybe higher returns. Or, an owner who's really involved might pick up new skills, which is a plus. But the flip side is also there. An owner, maybe especially a shareholder who just gets uncomfortable with the direction, might sell their shares. Or, in really serious cases, the change could even mean losing the business entirely. It shows that for owners, it's not just about the money. It's also about, well, their comfort level and maybe their vision for the company. An owner pulling back because they don't like the change, even if it looks good on paper, that's a risk too.
Okay, that makes sense. So if owners are setting the direction, then managers, they're often right there implementing it all. They're not just experiencing the change, they're making it happen. Does the source talk about how they juggle that dual role?
Yeah, that's a really crucial question. Managers are often on the front lines. The source mentions things like shifts in management styles, maybe becoming more employee-centric, or bringing in new tech, or handling downsizing, or even expansion. Positives, well, better morale, potentially, maybe performance rewards if things go well, even chances for career advancement if there's a restructure. But there are downsides too. New styles can be stressful. Restructures might mean their own job is on the line, or maybe their role shrinks, fewer responsibilities. So yeah, they're kind of caught in the middle, aren't they? Leading the change while also being directly affected by it. Needs a lot of resilience, good support from above.
Right. And then we get to employees, often seen as the group most impacted, and the source definitely seems to back that up. It notes the effects go way beyond just, redundancy.
Absolutely. The source is clear. Change can hit individual employees, or maybe just one team, or sometimes the whole business. Think about new technology coming in, automation, or maybe structural changes from a merger, or even just a new competitor forcing the business to change tack. Job loss is a definite risk, particularly with automation, yeah. The source stresses that management needs to handle this very sensitively.
Of course.
But there are potential positives too. Redeployment could open up new opportunities. Employees might learn really valuable new skills sometimes. Conditions might actually improve. You mentioned Telstra's T25 strategy earlier, launched 2021.
Yeah.
Well, the CEO said no big job cuts, but aiming for more efficiency, a better network. That definitely implies some employees would need retraining, maybe moving into different roles.
Okay.
But the flip side again, redeployment can be stressful. Retraining takes effort. Maybe longer hours are needed, or teams get broken up, which affects morale. It's a real balancing act.
Okay, let's talk customers. Key group, obviously. They want quality, good prices. How does change hit their experience?
Well, it's fascinating how their satisfaction can really swing. Positives. They might be thrilled if a business finally drops a product they hated, or if quality suddenly improves, or prices go down.
Sure, makes sense.
But they can also really dislike change. They might just want the business to revert back to what it was, Or maybe quality dips or prices go up and satisfaction plummets. Thinking about that Telstra T25 example, again, the whole point was improving the experience, aiming for that better experience. So customer impact was clearly front and center.
Right. But if it doesn't deliver?
Exactly. High stakes.
So customers can react strongly either way, which leads to this really interesting question the source raises. Will change always be accepted by customers, or maybe accepted quickly?
Yeah, that's a great point. And the answer seems to be not always immediately. The source gives this neat example. Aldi's ad campaign back in 2015-16, they used actual customers.
Oh, I remember that.
Right. And apparently that led to immediate acceptance, brought in new shoppers. Great result. But then it contrasts that with things that faced, and I quote, backlash before acceptance was won. Think about ATMs when they first appeared.
Oh, yeah, people were suspicious.
Definitely. Or self-serve checkouts. Or, remember, Safeway stores becoming Woolworths in Victoria. Or the Myki ticketing system for public transport down there.
Right, lots of grumbling initially.
Exactly. Initial resistance, sometimes quite strong, but now, well, they're mostly just part of how things are done. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much patience do businesses need? And what helps people get over that initial hump of resistance?
That's a really interesting angle. Okay, shifting focus again. Suppliers, the businesses providing the resources. How do changes within one company affect them?
Well, if you look at the bigger picture, a company changing course can directly hit its supplier's bottom line, their livelihood even. On the plus side for a supplier, maybe the company needs more resources because of the change, so that means more sales for them. Or it could be a chance for the supplier to update their own processes. But the downsides can be pretty harsh. The company might need fewer resources, so sales drop for the supplier. Or maybe the company switches suppliers altogether, leaving them high and dry. Or perhaps the company needs something different now, a new spec, and the supplier just can't afford to adapt their own production. It's a real chain reaction.
Yeah, you can see the dependency there. Okay, last group, the general community. The wider area where the business operates. The source talks about direct and indirect effects here.
Yeah, and this one's really important for understanding the sort of broader societal impacts. Think about a business moving location, or downsizing significantly, or maybe expanding, or even just bringing in major new technology. All of that can profoundly change the local community.
How so?
Well, positives could be job creation, right? That improves local employment, social well-being generally. Maybe brings more foot traffic for other local businesses too. Or perhaps the business makes positive environmental changes, like using more renewables. That benefits everyone. But the negative side, job losses can be devastating. Increased unemployment, hitting social well-being hard, especially if it's a small town, and that business was a major employer.
Right, the whole town feels it.
Exactly. Or maybe the change leads to increased pollution, or the business contributes less to local initiatives. Those are real downsides too. And the source gives a really potent, fairly recent example. The Australian car industry changes.
Ah, yes. Ford, Holden, Toyota closing manufacturing around 2017.
Precisely. The source mentions a slow decrease in the workforce. Those local communities, particularly around the plants, they suffered. Lost income, less spending in local shops. That spin-off effect hit other businesses hard. It shows just how interconnected things are.
A tough example. But didn't the source also point towards a more forward-looking view on that?
It did, yes. Which is interesting. So Australia lost that mass vehicle manufacturing, true. But a 2022 report, highlighted in the source, talks about the potential now to build up a high-tech electric vehicle industry. It points out that there are still, quote, approximately 35,000 people working in vehicle and parts manufacturing. There are existing facilities, lots of mineral resources needed for EVs, a skilled workforce, and people actually want to buy EVs.
So the potential is there.
The potential is there. The report basically concludes that what's missing, what's needed, is a big picture plan, an overarching, coordinating, and strategic national industry policy to actually make it happen. It's about turning a negative change into a new opportunity, but it needs deliberate action.
That's fascinating. Okay, so weaving all these threads together, the source also mentioned the Telstra T25 case study from 2021. How does that illustrate these different stakeholder impacts in practice?
Yeah, it's a good example because it pulls things together. You think about the managers at Telstra rolling out T25, they'd be implementing the change, supporting employees through it. Potentially quite stressful, like we discussed.
Right.
For employees, even with the CEO saying no major job cuts, that concern about roles changing, needing new skills, maybe redeployment, that would absolutely be present. And for customers, T25 was explicitly, as we said, focused on improving the experience, A more
Mhm.
efficient, more reliable network, a better experience. That was the promise.
So it really highlights that tension, doesn't it? The internal pressures of making the change happen versus the external promise to customers.
Exactly. It just underscores how businesses have to think about all these different effects on all these groups to try and get the best outcome overall for the business and for its stakeholders.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this deep dive really tell you, the listener? It seems clear that business change isn't just one thing. It's this complex web, isn't it? With interconnected effects that ripple out to every single group that has some kind of stake in the business. And the very same change can look like a fantastic opportunity to one group and a massive challenge to another. It really depends on your perspective where you're standing in that web.
Absolutely. And stepping back, understanding all those different viewpoints,
Mm.
the owner looking at returns, the community worried about jobs, the customer trying to figure out a new system, that understanding is just critical. It's what allows businesses and maybe policymakers too to anticipate issues, to manage the change process more effectively. Because knowledge really is most valuable when it helps us get ready and adapt. The business world is always changing.
It certainly is. Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. We've seen change is constant, it's inevitable. So here's the question. What if businesses proactively brought those diverse stakeholder voices, employees, customers, suppliers, maybe even the community, into the planning stages of change right from the start? Could that active involvement lead to not just smoother change processes, but actually more robust, more resilient outcomes for everyone involved in the long run? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope you've picked up some valuable insights today. Until next time.